A shy waitress tried to hide her scar on her face until a millionaire took her hand and said, "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee and rain that morning. Soft jazz played from an old speaker near the counter, blending with the hiss of the espresso machine. Behind it, Lena moved quietly, her hands steady, her eyes never meeting anyone's. She always made sure her long brown hair covered the left side of her face. Beneath it was a thin, pale scar that started just below her eye and disappeared into her jawline, a reminder of the fire she never spoke about. When new customers looked too long, she would lower her gaze and turn away. "Table 4 needs another latte," her coworker called. And Lena nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Got it." She placed the cup on the tray, careful not to spill, and walked toward the corner table. It was then that she noticed him, a man she had never seen before, sitting alone by the window. He wore a dark gray suit, clean lines and quiet confidence. His watch caught the morning light, but it wasn't the shine that made her pause. It was his eyes, calm, observant, not judgmental, just noticing. She felt her chest tighten. "Don't look," she told herself. "Just set the cup down." But when she did, his voice stopped her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Is it always this quiet here in the mornings?" She looked up by instinct, then froze. For a moment, his gaze flicked toward the strand of hair hiding her cheek. She quickly turned away, tucking the hair back into place. "Usually," she said softly, "people come in later. Rush hour crowd." He smiled. "That's nice. Peaceful." His tone was easy, like he wasn't trying to make conversation, just acknowledging her existence. That alone felt strange. Most people pretended not to see her at all. "I like peaceful," he added. "The city doesn't offer much of it." She didn't answer, but he caught the hint of a shy smile before she walked away. When the bell above the door chimed later, she peeked up and saw him leaving, a generous tip folded neatly under the cup. She exhaled, not realizing she had been holding her breath the whole time. Her coworker nudged her. "Who was that? Looked important." Lena shrugged. "Just another customer." But she found herself glancing at the table again, at the napkin where he'd scribbled a single word. Asterisk, thank you. Asterisk. That night, after closing, she wiped the counter while the rain tapped softly against the windows. Her reflection in the glass was faint, half hidden by the dim light. She lifted her hand, tracing the scar beneath her hairline. "Just another customer," she whispered, as if convincing herself. But something in the way he had looked at her lingered, like he had seen the scar and, for once, hadn't flinched. Outside, the streetlights blurred in the rain, and far across the city, Ethan Cole leaned back in his car, watching the same storm. He turned the napkin over in his hand, the one he'd written on that morning. He smiled faintly. "She doesn't know it yet," he murmured. "But she just reminded me what real strength looks like." The next morning, the cafe smelled of cinnamon and warm bread. Sunlight filtered through the glass windows, glinting off half-cleaned cups as Lena tied her apron tighter around her waist. It was just another day, she told herself. The man from yesterday had probably forgotten her already, but when the bell above the door chimed, her heart skipped a beat. Ethan Cole walked in again, same calm presence, same quiet confidence. He nodded politely at the cashier and took a seat at the same table by the window. "Table 4. Her coworker whispered with a grin. "Your friend's back." Lena felt her stomach twist. "He is just a customer," she muttered, though her hands trembled as she carried the tray. When she set the cup down, he smiled. "Morning, Lena." She blinked, surprised. "You remembered my name? It was on your name tag," he said simply, then added, "But I also remember people who make great coffee." She laughed quietly, her eyes darting away. He watched her for a moment, noticing how she kept tucking her hair to hide her cheek. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She hesitated. Sure. Do you ever paint? The question caught her off guard. Paint? She repeated. How did you— There is paint under your nails, he said, smiling softly. Not from this café, I suppose. Her cheeks flushed. I do sometimes. Nothing big, just sketches. You should show your work someday, he said. People would want to see what you see. She shook her head, almost laughing. People do not even want to see my face. Ethan's expression softened. But before he could reply, a group of customers came in. The brief moment was gone. She hurried back to the counter, but the words stayed in her chest like a weight. Later that evening, when the cafe was nearly empty, Ethan approached the counter. You close soon? He asked. In 10 minutes, she said. Why? Because I think you deserve a walk after being on your feet all day. She looked up in surprise. A walk? He smiled. There is a street market 2 blocks away. They have the best caramel popcorn in the city. I could use some company. She hesitated. It had been a long time since anyone had asked her to go anywhere. The cautious voice in her head screamed no, but something about his tone, calm and respectful, made her nod. Okay, she said finally. Outside, the night air was cool, filled with the scent of roasted peanuts and laughter from the market. Lena kept her head down, her hair still covering her scar, but Ethan matched her pace, never rushing. They stopped at a small stall, and he handed her a paper cone filled with popcorn. Try it, he said. She smiled faintly. You are really persistent about snacks. Only the good ones, he replied. For a moment their hands brushed as she took the cone. She flinched slightly, but he did not move away. Instead, he looked at her, his voice low. You know, scars mean something survived. Her breath caught. No one had ever said it that way. He continued. You look at it like it is the worst part of you. But I see someone who walked through fire and kept going. Lena swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. She turned toward the market lights, blinking fast. You do not even know me, she whispered. Not yet, he said quietly. That night, when she got home, she set the paper cone on her small kitchen counter. It still smelled faintly of caramel. She caught her reflection in the window again, half face, half shadow, and for the first time, she did not look away immediately. Outside, the city hummed softly, and somewhere across town, Ethan sat in his car, staring at the same cone on his dashboard. He smiled to himself and murmured, "One step at a time, Lena." The next few days passed quietly. Ethan did not come to the cafe, and Lena told herself it did not matter. But every time the bell above the door chimed, her heart gave a small, foolish jump. On the 4th day, she found something in the mailroom behind the counter, an envelope with her name written in neat handwriting. Inside was a short note and a folded flyer. You once said you paint. I am curating a small art event this weekend for my foundation. If you would like to attend, come as my guest. No pressure. Just art and maybe good coffee, Ethan. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it again. A foundation. She had assumed he was just a businessman, not realizing who he truly was. That evening, she searched his name online. Ethan Cole, founder of Cole Foundation, philanthropist, investor in medical innovation. A man who had once survived a building explosion that killed his sister. The articles described him as private, distant, generous, but closed off. Lena closed the laptop, heart racing. Why would someone like him even notice her? Saturday came before she could decide whether to go. Her coworker Mia found the invitation in her bag and gasped. You are going, right? Lena, this is not just an event, it is an opportunity. I do not belong in a place like that, Lena said softly. It is not my world. Maybe it could be, Mia smiled. Wear the blue dress, the one with sleeves. You will look amazing. By 7 o'clock that night, Lena stood outside the art hall, clutching her small purse. The city lights shimmered on the glass facade, and music floated out from the open doors. She almost turned around twice, but then she heard his voice behind her. You came. She turned. Ethan looked different, no suit, just a dark shirt and open collar, relaxed and warm. I was not sure if I should, she admitted. You should, he said. You belong here more than you think. Inside, the gallery was filled with paintings from survivors, people who had faced accidents, illness, or trauma. Every piece carried a story of healing. Lena stopped in front of one that showed a woman standing in front of a mirror, half her reflection scarred, the other half glowing in light. She whispered, "It is beautiful." Ethan stood beside her. That artist spent 2 years hiding her burns before painting this. She said art was the first thing that made her feel alive again. His tone was soft, reverent. Lena nodded, lost in the image. "I understand that," she said quietly. They moved to a quieter corner, where a series of smaller sketches were displayed. Ethan handed her a cup of sparkling water. "You could have been one of these artists," he said. "Your work deserves to be seen." She laughed faintly. "I paint for myself. It keeps me calm." "Maybe it could help others too," he replied. She looked at him then, really looked. The lights caught the faint scar that ran along his wrist, almost invisible but there. "You have one too," she said softly. He smiled. "We all do. Some are just easier to see." For the first time, Lena felt something inside her shift, a quiet recognition that maybe she was not as alone as she thought. As the evening ended, Ethan walked her to the entrance. "Thank you for inviting me," she said. "It meant more than you know." "Thank you for coming," he said. "And Lena, next time, do not hide behind your hair. The world will handle it. And if it cannot, that is the world's problem, not yours." She blushed, speechless. When she got home, she hung the invitation on her wall. For the first time in years, she set up her easel, dipped her brush into paint, and began sketching the curve of a hand, reaching out not to pull her away, but to lift her up. Days passed after the art event, and the café felt quieter without Ethan around. Yet, his words replayed in Lena's mind every time she tied her hair to cover her cheek. "The world will handle it." She whispered those words one morning as she stood before the mirror. Her hand hesitated, then she tucked the strand of hair behind her ear, revealing the faint, silvery scar that had defined her life for years. It was not perfect, but it was hers. That same afternoon, Ethan walked back into the café. He smiled when he saw her, the light catching the curve of her uncovered face. "You took my advice," he said warmly. Lena blushed, looking down. "Maybe," she murmured. "I figured the world could use some practice." He laughed softly, and something about that sound made the other customers glance over. Ethan ordered his usual, but this time he stayed longer, asking about her paintings, her favorite artists, her dreams. For the first time, she talked freely. "I used to want to study fine arts," she said. "But after the accident, I dropped out of everything. It felt pointless to create beauty when I could not even look at myself." Ethan's eyes softened. "You did not lose your ability to create beauty. You just stopped believing you could." Her throat tightened at his words. Before she could reply, her coworker rushed over. "Lena, the delivery truck's stuck again, and the supplier is yelling about invoices." She sighed. "I will handle it." Ethan watched her walk out the back door and shook his head with quiet admiration. Later that week, she received another letter from the Cole Foundation. Inside was a formal invitation. "We are looking for an assistant program coordinator for the upcoming Second Light Project Art Therapy for Trauma Survivors. We believe your perspective could make it meaningful." At the bottom was Ethan's signature. She read it 3 times, her heart pounding. The next day, she found herself standing in front of the foundation, building a tall glass structure with sunlight reflecting like ripples of water. When she entered, she was greeted by a soft-spoken receptionist who led her to the office. Ethan looked up from his desk, surprise flickering into a smile. "I hoped you would come." "You call this a job interview?" she teased, nerves in her voice. "Something like that," he replied. "You already passed the only test that matters. You know what pain feels like, and you did not let it define you." She sat across from him, unsure what to say. "I do not have the right degree," she admitted. "You have empathy," he said. "That is rarer." For the first time, she believed him. Over the next weeks, Lena began working at the foundation, helping organize community workshops. She learned how to speak with survivors, guide them through small art projects, and listen without judgment. Each time someone said, "I do not want anyone to see my scars," she smiled gently and said, "I used to feel that way too." One evening, after everyone left, she found Ethan still in his office, looking through old photographs. One showed a young woman with kind eyes. The resemblance to him was clear. "Your sister?" she asked softly. He nodded. She was the reason I started all this. I could not save her, but I thought maybe I could save others. He closed the album slowly. And now, I think it is saving me too. Lena stood beside him, her voice almost a whisper. You already saved me, Ethan. He looked at her, his gaze warm, steady. No, Lena, you saved yourself. I just reminded you what strength looks like. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the glass, casting soft gold across the room. For the first time in years, Lena smiled without lowering her head. The scar on her face caught the light, not as a flaw, but as proof she had survived. By the time spring painted the city in soft colors, Lena had become a familiar presence at the foundation. Her confidence had grown quietly, like a flower that bloomed when no one was watching. She laughed more, spoke louder, and stopped hiding her face from strangers. The scar was still there, a thin trace across her cheek, but it no longer defined her. What people noticed now was the light in her eyes when she talked about art. Ethan noticed it too. He often stood by the workshop door, watching her guide others with gentle patience. You have a gift, he said one evening after the last group left. She smiled. It feels like the first time I am useful again. You have always been useful, he said. You just stopped believing it. Their conversations became the quiet heartbeat of her days. But one afternoon, a sudden change shattered her calm. A journalist came to the foundation asking to feature the woman with the scar. Without warning, a photo of Lena appeared online the next morning with the headline, From Burn Victim to the Face of the Coal Foundation. The article meant well, but the comments were cruel. Some mocked her looks, others claimed Ethan was using her for publicity. By the time she arrived at work, whispers followed her down the hall. She ran into Ethan's office, tears brimming. Did you know about this? She asked. His expression darkened as he looked at the article. No, I swear I did not authorize this. Then who did? She demanded. Because they turned me into a story I never agreed to tell. He stood up. I will find out. I promise. But she was already shaking her head. It does not matter. It is too late. Everyone has seen it. I cannot stay here. Lena, wait. I trusted you, Ethan, she said, her voice breaking. I finally felt safe, and now I feel like a project again. She walked out before he could stop her. That night, she packed up her small apartment. The invitation from the foundation still hung on the wall, but she could not bear to look at it. She deleted her social media, switched off her phone, and disappeared into the city. Days turned into weeks. Ethan tried to reach her, but every message came back unanswered. He suspended the foundation's media team and shut down the campaign, but nothing felt right without her presence. One late evening, he walked through the empty art hall where her students used to paint. On one easel was a half-finished canvas she had left behind a pair of hands holding a cracked heart, light shining through the fractures. He stood there for a long time, then whispered, You do not get to disappear, Lena. Not like this. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived at Lena's door in the small town where she had taken refuge. Inside was a simple handwritten note. Next Saturday, Downtown Art Hall. I owe you the ending of your story. Come if you can. There was no signature, but she knew the handwriting instantly. For days, she debated whether to go. But when Saturday came, something in her heart pushed her forward. The hall was quiet when she entered, her steps echoing on the marble floor. And then she froze. The walls were lined with portraits, faces of people with scars, burns, and marks, each painted with care and light. Above the entrance hung a banner. The Gallery of Second Light. At the center stood Ethan, waiting. When their eyes met, he said softly, I wanted the world to see what I see. Strength, beauty, you. She felt tears blur her vision as he walked toward her. I never wanted to expose you, Lena. I wanted to honor you. Her voice trembled. Why me? He took her hand gently, the same way he had in the café months ago. Because you showed me what healing looks like. You reminded me that scars are not the end, they are where the light gets in. For a long moment, Lena could not move. The hall was filled with quiet light, each portrait glowing with stories of survival. Her own face was among them, painted in soft tones, her scar visible but surrounded by golden hues. Beneath the frame, a small plaque read, Lena Brooks, the woman who chose to stay. Her throat tightened as she turned toward Ethan. "You did this?" He nodded. "I wanted you to know that your story mattered. You taught others to stop hiding. I wanted to give you back what the world took away." Lena stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "You turned my pain into art." "You turned it into strength," he said. "I just showed it to the world." Tears stung her eyes as she looked around at the other portraits, each one a person who had come through the same program she had helped build. Some of them stood in the crowd now, smiling, clapping softly as she turned. The warmth that filled her chest was something she had never felt before. Acceptance, belonging, peace. Ethan handed her a small box. "I know you do not like surprises, but this one is different." She hesitated, opening it carefully. Inside was her old silk scarf, the same one she had always used to hide her scar, now framed in glass. Across the top, engraved in silver, were the words, "Still beautiful." Her breath caught. "You kept it? You left it on your easel the day you quit," he said quietly. "I wanted to give it back when you were ready to see yourself the way I do." She laughed through tears, shaking her head. "You always know exactly what to say." "No," he said gently. "You just never listened before." The crowd began to disperse as the evening drew to a close. But Lena and Ethan stayed in the center of the room, surrounded by art and the faint hum of music. "What now?" she asked softly. "Now," he said, "we keep building. The program is expanding to 3 more cities, and I want you to lead it. You have the heart for it, Lena." "Me?" she said, stunned. "You trust me with that?" "Completely," he replied, "and I hope you will trust me too." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Her breath hitched as he opened it to reveal a silver bracelet engraved with a single line, "Light lives in you." He fastened it around her wrist, his fingers brushing hers. "This is not about fixing what was broken," he said. "It is about celebrating that you are whole." The hall lights dimmed as the staff began cleaning up. Lena looked up at the ceiling, where light from the chandelier scattered like stars. "I never thought I would be here," she said. "A year ago, I could barely look at myself. Now people look at me and see hope. That is because of you." Ethan shook his head. "No, that is because of us. You showed me how to live again." Outside, the city stretched out in shimmering gold. They stepped into the cool night air together, the sound of traffic blending with distant laughter. Ethan looked at her, his eyes steady. "Lena, may I ask you something?" "Anything," she said. "Will you stay? Not just for the program for me." She froze, her heart racing. "You mean," he nodded slowly, "I have spent years helping people heal, but I never let anyone heal me." "You did." She smiled, tears glistening. "Ethan, I am not perfect." "Good," he said, smiling back. "Neither am I." For a long moment they stood there, the city lights reflecting off her scar like a thread of gold. Then he took her hand, just as he had that first day in the café, and whispered, "You do not need to hide anymore." Lena smiled through her tears and replied, "I know, because now I am seen." In the distance, the foundation sign glowed softly. Second light, a reminder that love, like healing, begins when we stop hiding. Weeks after the gallery opening, Lena's life began to change in ways she never expected. Her story had spread quietly through social media, not because of scandal this time, but because of hope. People from across the country wrote to the foundation, thanking her for inspiring them to face their own scars. She read each letter with trembling hands and a full heart. Ethan often found her sitting by the window of her new office, a stack of envelopes beside her, eyes glistening. "You are changing more lives than you know," he said one afternoon. She smiled. "So are you." They worked side by side on the expansion of Second Light, traveling to different cities, meeting survivors, and building workshops. On one trip to Chicago, Lena led an art session for burn victims at a local hospital. She taught them how to paint their pain into colors instead of hiding it. Watching them smile through tears, she realized how far she had come. That night, back at the hotel, Ethan knocked on her door with 2 cups of tea. "You were incredible today," he said. "You turned pain into art." She laughed softly. "You said that to me once. And it is still true, he said. The silence between them grew comfortable, filled with unspoken warmth. But just as peace seemed permanent, an unexpected blow arrived. A major donor to the foundation withdrew his support, claiming Ethan was distracted by personal involvement with an employee. The board demanded explanations. Whispers circulated again, old rumors resurfaced, painting Lena as the reason for Ethan's supposed loss of focus. She overheard two staff members whispering in the hallway. "She is just a waitress he fell for," one said. "He is risking everything for her." The words stung more than she wanted to admit. That evening, she went to Ethan's office. "They are talking again," she said quietly. "I cannot let your reputation get ruined because of me." Ethan looked up sharply. "Do not do that, Lena. Do not take the blame for other people's insecurities." "But it is true," she said. "You built all this, and now they question you because of me." He stood, his voice firm. "They question me because I finally care about something real. I spent years hiding behind success. Then you walked in and reminded me what purpose looks like. If they cannot see that, I do not care." "Ethan, please," she whispered, tears forming. "Do not risk your life's work for me." He stepped closer, his tone soft but unyielding. "You are part of that work, Lena. You are the reason it means something now." She looked at him for a long moment, then turned away, overwhelmed. "I need time," she said finally. "Please understand." He nodded, though his eyes betrayed the hurt. "I will wait," he said quietly. Days turned into a week, and Lena withdrew from the foundation, working remotely while the board handled the controversy. Alone in her apartment, she stared at her reflection again. The scar had faded slightly, but the fear of losing everything resurfaced like an old wound. One evening, a knock came at her door. When she opened it, she found a small canvas leaning against the wall. It was unsigned, but she knew his style immediately. Ethan had painted it. The image showed two hands reaching across a crack of light. Underneath were the words, "Some things are worth the risk." Her eyes filled with tears as she held the painting close. She realized she had been hiding again, this time not from the world but from her own feelings. She picked up her phone and called him. When he answered, she said simply, "I am done running, Ethan. I am ready to stand beside you, no matter what they say." His voice softened. "Then let us show them what love built on healing looks like." And in that moment, Lena knew this was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of the life she had always deserved. When Lena returned to the foundation, the air felt different. The staff who once whispered now watched her in silence as she walked through the glass doors, her head held high. Ethan stood waiting in the atrium, a faint smile crossing his face the moment he saw her. "You came back," he said softly. "I told you," she replied. "I am done running." That evening they held a board meeting to address the accusations. The large conference room was filled with tension, the sound of pens clicking and papers rustling echoing through the air. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, we appreciate your dedication, but we must ask whether your relationship with Miss Brooks compromises your judgment as the foundation's director." Ethan leaned forward, calm but unwavering. "No," he said clearly. "If anything, it has strengthened it. The work we do here is about transformation, about turning pain into purpose. Lena has lived that journey. She has inspired people far beyond what any of us imagined. If this board cannot understand that, then perhaps I am not the problem." Murmurs rippled through the room. Lena sat beside him, her hands trembling under the table. But when he reached out and gently covered them with his, she felt courage surge through her chest. One of the younger board members spoke up. "The public sees hope when they see her. The donations after the gallery event tripled. Maybe the world is ready for a new kind of leadership." Slowly, heads began to nod. The chairman sighed. "Very well, the investigation is closed. Let us focus on the mission." When the meeting ended, Ethan and Lena stepped out into the quiet corridor. She exhaled shakily. "You could have lost everything for me." He smiled faintly. "No, Lena, I could have lost everything without you." Over the next months, the foundation grew stronger than ever. Lena became the head of community programs, leading initiatives for survivors across the country. The media that once questioned her now celebrated her story of resilience. She appeared in interviews, always speaking not about herself, but about the power of healing and second chances. Yet one evening, As she walked into the old art hall, she found Ethan alone, staring at one of her early paintings. "You miss her, do you not?" she asked gently, knowing his thoughts had drifted to his sister again. He nodded. "Every day. But lately, it feels less like loss and more like legacy." She stepped closer, touching his arm. "She would be proud of you." He turned to her, his eyes soft. "She would be proud of us." Outside, rain began to fall softly against the windows, the same rhythm that had filled that café months ago when they first met. Ethan looked at her, a quiet smile forming. "Do you ever think about how all of this started? One cup of coffee, one scar, one conversation?" Lena laughed softly. "Sometimes it feels like another lifetime." "Maybe it was the lifetime that had to end," he said, "so this one could begin." She looked up at him, her heart full. "I never believed I could love again, Ethan. Not after everything that happened. But you made me see that love is not about being flawless. It is about being brave enough to be seen." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, revealing the faint silver line that had once defined her. "And you," he whispered, "are the bravest person I know." In that quiet moment, the lights flickered softly above them, reflecting off the glass walls like a constellation. Lena leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she felt completely unafraid of being seen. And as the rain fell heavier outside, Ethan whispered, "We are not finished, Lena. There is still so much light left to share." She smiled, closing her eyes. "Then let us keep shining." The sound of rain faded into the hum of the city, and the camera of life pulled back slowly, revealing two souls who had turned scars into something far greater, into love that healed everything it touched. 1 year later, the foundation celebrated its anniversary with a quiet ceremony at the same gallery where everything had changed for Lena. The walls were filled with new art portraits, poems, and photographs from survivors who had found courage through the programs she helped create. The sign above the entrance read, "The light we share." As guests filled the hall, Ethan stood beside Lena, watching her greet people with warmth and ease. Her laughter carried across the room, soft and confident. There was no trace of the timid waitress who once hid behind her hair. She wore a simple blue dress, her scar faint but visible in the light. Instead of hiding it, she let it exist freely, a symbol of everything she had overcome. When it was time for her to speak, the crowd fell silent. Lena stepped to the microphone, her hands steady. "A year ago," she began, "I thought healing meant going back to who I was before. But I learned that healing means becoming someone new, someone who can look at her scars and say, 'This is me, and I am still beautiful.'" The audience erupted into gentle applause. She continued, her voice full of emotion. "I used to believe that scars were what set us apart, but now I know they are what connect us. They tell stories of survival, of love, of second chances. If my story helped even one person believe they deserve to be seen, then every tear, every fear was worth it." Ethan watched her with quiet pride, his heart swelling. When the applause finally faded, he walked up to the stage, taking her hand as the audience watched with anticipation. "Lena Brooks," he said, his voice steady but filled with feeling. "You taught me that leadership is not about power or perfection, it is about courage and compassion. You turned my foundation into something real, and you turned my life into something meaningful." She looked at him, eyes wide with emotion. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps filled the room as he knelt before her. "You once said you were done hiding," he said softly. "So am I. Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, the world went still. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Ethan. 1,000 times yes." The crowd erupted in cheers as he slipped the ring on her finger. It was simple silver, with a small engraving inside that read, "Still beautiful." They held each other as flashes from cameras filled the room, but to Lena, everything else faded away. All she could feel was the warmth of his hand and the rhythm of his heartbeat against hers. Later that night, after the guests had gone, they stood alone in the gallery, surrounded by the art that had brought them together. "Do you ever think about how far we have come?" Lena asked quietly. Ethan smiled. "Every day, you changed the meaning of light for me, Lena. It used to be something you chased. Now I know it is something you create. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the soft hum of the city outside. I never thought my scar would lead me here, she whispered. Scars do not end stories, he said gently. They begin them. As they turned off the lights and walked out hand in hand, the final glow from the sign, "The Light We Share," reflected off the glass door, catching the silver of her bracelet and the shimmer of her ring. Lena smiled, feeling whole, free, and alive. The voiceover closed softly. Sometimes love does not erase the scars, it just teaches us that they were never something to hide. And with that, their story faded into light, not an ending, but a promise that healing, once found, continues forever.